Quite a lot of people here. Nice. Okay, so a very warm welcome to the talk about technical inspection. First, I want to give you an overview about the people behind the technical inspection, and after that, you get some technical information about the mechanical inspection, so that you know who's responsible for what. So I'm the guy at the right, and I'm the glue, hopefully, between all the people on the left. And there's Christoph and Jet for the mechanical inspection and for the chassis and SES. And those do the final decision for their area. So if Christoph says during mechanical inspection that's the decision, then that's a decision. You can ask me, but I will tell you that Christoph did the decision. Same for Jet. Then for the electrical inspection, there's Matthias, who is responsible for that, and Sarah for the accumulator inspection. And for the DV inspection, there are Martin and Matthias. So Matthias has 2 lives and doesn't sleep, I think. Next, what's the target of the electrical or of the technical inspection? No, don't push the, just push the green button. Yes, I do. So the target is we want to check your vehicle for safety and for fairness in racing condition. So we want that the competition is as fair as possible to give you a great experience and to have it as safe as possible so that your successors still have the experience and we don't have to shut it down because someone died. So we verify if the requirements given by the rules are met, and we give you a sticker if we couldn't find anything which isn't within the rules. But that doesn't mean that your car is completely within the rule at every time. So you as a team are responsible that your car is within the rules. The sticker doesn't say your car is within the rules, it's just we haven't found anything which is against the rules. And as all the years, we have the time for safety and fairness reason to check your vehicle at we have the right to check your vehicle at any time. Most of the time we do it after dynamic events, so before you leave the dynamic area, you get checked. And if your vehicle isn't within the rules anymore, then most likely all the runs between entering dynamic event and leaving dynamic area and leaving dynamic area will get penalized. That's just a matter of fairness. All information, documents, rules, stuff you need to know is published at the Formula Student website under official documents. There is an FAQ section which I advise to follow quite closely, because if there are rules requests we think they're very important, or if they come up more often, then we publish an FAQ. And so, yeah, just read them and learn to understand the rules. Just to give you a short overview about our workload, we have roughly 5.5 requests a day. If you do the math, it's quite a lot of time we spend to answer your questions. So please focus on for the rules questions, for questions about understanding the rules. It's not a scrutineering. If you ask, can I build my device exactly this way. It's not a rules issue. You have to ask the questions to, or if you aren't able to interpret the rules in the way that you are able to decide it by your own, then you have to do a rules issue ticket for the understanding of the rule, but not for your specific device. So you have to understand the rules in a way that you're able to see if your device is within the rules or not. It's just about understanding the rules and not about a yes or no answer. And for administrative reasons, only do one question per ticket. So we have a database with all the questions for rule 111, and then we can look for follow-up questions to rule 111, what did we answer before? So that we can have an equal level. What? Yeah, just use the official rules tracker. That's the thing. If you're asked by email, you will always get the link to the rules tracker. Just don't write an email. There's sometimes we think, or I think, or Christoph thinks, or Sarah thinks that there's a difference between the understanding of the rules for the teams and for us. We think the rules are just the borders of a huge free area where you can play. So it's not about a cookbook, how to do your car. There's no formula which says, do it, take this Lego stone, build on the previous one, and you have a car. So see the rules as a fence and not as a cookbook. That's why the rules are kind of wavy in some parts, because we don't know how you actually solve the task. So we cannot write the rules specifically according to your solution. You have to understand the idea behind the rule, and then your human sense tells you if it's okay or not. If you want to prepare for scrutineering, do a scrutineering. First, do it by your own active team members. Then let independent people do a scrutineering, alumni or people you know who did scrutineering in some other events, I don't know. But other people than those who built the car, and most of the issues will be solved before you enter a competition. And if you do the scrutineering and before the first shakedown of your car, hopefully, be aware of wear and tear of your vehicle. So the condition of your vehicle might change till the competition. Additionally, if you have a neat and tidy car, scrutineering goes much faster, because the scrutineers, they see everything, they can check all the positive locking, for example, and then everything goes faster, less hassle for you. So if you have a neat and tidy car, good quality of production, scrutineering will be very, very easy for you. After a lot of general stuff, Christoph will give you hints for the mechanical one.
Yeah. Also, welcome from my side. We skipped some general slides this year we had in the past, because we think you can just have a look at our website. You can download the presentations from the last year. You can see them on YouTube, so we don't have to do it every year. This year we want to give you a little bit other presentation about rule changes we did for the actual season. One thing which didn't change, but yeah, we had a lot of questions about that, is the BSBD. It's still the same rule like 2019, and we provided it an example how to build it. We don't say you must build it like this, it's just an example. And we also got some feedback that the FSG sells very expensive BSBD. No, we don't. Someone copied our schematics and they sell it. It's okay for us, they can do it, you don't have to buy it. But we don't sell it, we just provide the schematics. And if you use our schematic, then be aware about the voltage divider. It's just an example and it must not fit with your sensors. There's one rule change this year about the wheel lock nuts. They must be in a way to prevent losing of the nut and the wheel. So you see it here, the picture up there. This is a good solution and this is a bad solution, and we don't want to see this anymore. And there's also a change for the lock bolts and the studs. They can't be hollow anymore. So don't present a solution like this. I see there someone has a question. We will have a long question session after the presentation. So then we changed a lot in the cooling system. In the past, you had to have a firewall also for the water cooling part, and we said we don't need it anymore because water can't burn, but for safety reasons you need a rigidly mounted cover plate which is heat resistant. And we got a lot of questions about that. What is heat resistant? We say it must be able to withstand temperatures, permanently withstand temperatures for about 100 degrees. And as Simon said, the rules are written in a way to give you as much freedom as possible to do engineering, just to use your brain to find a good solution. And so if you think that thin aluminum foil is a good solution, then maybe it's you think that, but it's not. So don't do it like that. If you make a solution like that, this would be okay. So one change we made is you need short circuit protection for the low voltage system, and it must be not more or not far away than 100 millimeters from the ungrounded terminals from the battery. It's just a little hint because it's a little change, and a lot of teams could maybe miss this change in the rules. And then one maybe bigger change is we deleted the rule about power ground devices. We deleted this rule because we said we don't need this rule. We have rules like A124, We check a technical inspection if your vehicle is safe or it's not. And we have a rule, T211. The vehicle must be designed and fabricated in accordance with good engineering practice. So if you build something which is not safe, and it's not safe for the driver or for the team at testing or for the people staying around at the test track or at the racetrack, then it's not built in accordance with good engineering practice. And therefore we cannot allow you to use the vehicle like this. So if you do anything, just think about, is it safe? Is it within the intent of the rule or is it not? We don't want to give more restrictions than we need, but if we see maybe next year that you do a lot of things which are not safe, maybe we will change this rule again for 2021.
Also, to come back to the aero devices, we think that most of the other rules will exclude any other dangerous or bad engineering practice designs. I've seen some rules questions about very, well, special designs regarding the aeroflow. Well, there are multiple rules in our rule sets, and there's definitely one which will cover the very, very, very creative ones. So please be aware of those. Read the rules very carefully regarding the aero devices and the fact that that one specific rule got out. Other rules will still cover very special designs. Regarding the quick jack, we've seen quite a lot of teams with very, very big assemblies of quick jacks. So at least like 1, 2, 3 parts or even more. And they tend to lie around a lot. And people and scrutineers will trip over them. Especially also it takes a lot of time for you to jack up your car, which, well, it's a quick jack. So, well, the word says it. We don't want you or anyone else to wait before you actually have assembled your quick jack. So hence the one device and does not need to be assembled. Can be operated by one person. So in the right below picture you also see like these wooden boards to put under your wheels. Also not okay, like it can't be operated by one person. It needs to be locked and secured and stable when jacked. Well, there have been some quick jacks which, well, basically if you just push the car, it just already almost tends to fall over. We don't want to see that anymore. And obviously the rule itself, possibly by one person and not require any other actions to basically position your car and the quick jack itself. Also, again, every year, again, driver equipment. For your own safety, do not bring stuff which is not okay anymore. I don't want to sit in any race vehicle with, well, damaged helmets, damaged gear. I wouldn't feel safe. Would you? Would your driver do? And then cash, really? Like, how much money do you have for your driver equipment? Basically, the rule for anyone is, as much as you can afford, you will spend on basically a good helmet. So a helmet you can buy cheap, but you can also buy very, very expensive. And if you can't afford the very expensive one, at least get a new, safe one according to the standards. It doesn't need to be that expensive. Don't bring any damaged gear to the event, so please check it yourself again as well. And don't forget to pick it up, even if they're not okay according to us. Don't forget to pick them up afterwards as well. Also, in the rules, there's a few things not clearly defined, such as the Hans device. We do allow it, but then with the Hans device, there's an adaptation to like your straps allowed. But if you do use it, please come to driver egress with it and do the driver egress with it. It must be brought to inspection because it will limit the driver's movement and visibility. So we do want to see it in inspection beforehand. Also, something like additional protectors, which you use in karting, or any other back protectors as well. Although they're not mentioned in the rules, please make sure that they're still the same as all other clothing, fire retardant, so don't come up and show up with plastic stuff. Also again, it can be worn, but wear it or bring it to inspection, wear it during driver egress so that we can check it. Something very simple, the shoulder harness mounting points. Still, there's teams doing it wrong every year. The distance is not correct or wrongly measured. Basically, you have to measure it from the center to the center, not from the two inner parts or the two outer parts, center to center. Non-crushable objects. So we've had some issues with the bots, especially also in post-scrutineering this year. At any time, any movement needs to be within your primary structure. Feet must remain within the primary structure. And it also means that anything needs to be behind the defined plane of the 25 millimeters at any time. Even with like also non-crushable objects, what do you consider non-crushable? So sensors for driverless cars, front wing attachments, everything, please keep that area free. And every year, again, there's discussions, and I would really like to quicken up scrutineering and do not have these discussions anymore. So, since it's not really included in rules, it had been changed. So the bots must function in any case and also without damaging any part of the vehicle. So it shouldn't activate just by basically destroying your pedals. It should be able to activate at any time. And even if you destroy anything that the driver can destroy on its own, well, might not be good design and hence, again, bad engineering practice. Another question, a nice one, we've seen quite a lot this year already. For driverless cars, and I know this is mechanical inspection, but then driverless cars, where they can position their systems. Basically, we have the template, and yes, it does include that keep out zone or that not keep out zone where you can position sensors or activation devices, anything else. So yes, we do, it's not yet a frequently asked question published, I believe, but we included it here to announce to everyone, yes, you can position parts there. The firewall. Also something which apparently is very, very difficult for teams. It's either not very rigid or it has gaps on the other sides. Always very much of an issue. Well, the rules are pretty clear here. Also, the new thing here then is that the brake system and the liquid contained therein for the brake systems, we've added this into the firewall system as well, but these specifically do not need the firewall. But all the other things, they do. So indeed, the hydraulic fluid highlighted, there's a bit of an exception there. There's teams always asking me, so, but what do you consider a good firewall or a bad firewall? I try to like highlight it here. Left, bad engineering practice. Aluminum tape all over the place. And every single time you have to open it up, close it again, and basically you have to check it again. And it takes you a lot of time, and it takes us a lot of time. So please, a good example on the right, here you see everything is nicely sealed. You can actually open it up and close it pretty quickly, and it looks very, very neat. And this is specifically what we really like. So please take an example of this image. Another question, noise test procedure. Yes, the rules, they mention the specific procedure, how it should go, which basically leaves a bit of a gap, like a gray area that we measure in a horizontal plane from the exhaust. But that means that if the exhaust is pointed upwards, it would be much easier to pass the noise test instead of a car which has the exhaust in a horizontal plane. But we will measure along the length of the exhaust. So in the right example B and not example A. If there's any structures blocking our measurements, we reserve the right to measure it on in a closer range if there's really no other option available. So you can pass noise test in that case, but then again, might not be beneficial for you. So if you are unsure, make sure that there's always some position where we can measure, and even if it's a shorter distance, it will pass the test there as well. Another issue, I've seen a lot of them, and I had very lengthy discussions about gas cylinders last year. The issue that I've noticed is that a lot of teams, they look at this page with the rules and they see like the rollover and protection envelope, and they see the service envelope on a picture below, and they assume that that is the protection envelope, which is not the case. As soon as your wheels are gone, what's left is only the primary structure, and only the primary structure is the thing that we are looking for, and not the surface envelope, which is completely something else. So please keep that figure and the rule itself apart. It's two different rules, so 1116 and 1114. So hence, you've seen examples, red, not okay. There's parts of the gas cylinder outside of the primary structure, but then again inside the surface envelope, which they thought was okay. And then on the right top, you see an example which is perfectly fine. And especially since the gas cylinder itself can be rather big, to position it later on or reposition it in your car can be quite difficult. I've not included the image, but there's a team which actually had to start welding, like they welded a complete new structure around their gas cylinder to be rule compliant, which again takes a lot of time, is an issue of your time as well. Also repeat of rules last year's. The dimensions of the impact attenuator, there's stated in the rules it has to be 200 millimeter wide and 100 millimeter high. And yes, I'm aware that has been not very consistent over the past years, but let me say that the rule here is pretty clear. It has to be wide and high and not oriented 90 degrees over the length direction. And then also related to the impact attenuator, the intention and interpretation of impact attenuator and the testing itself. So basically what's new this year, and already received quite a lot of feedback from teams, is that you have to test it with the actual materials in mind, the actual composite chassis, or the monocoque in this case. The reason behind it is, well, I've published it already in the FAQ. It's pretty clear that composites itself behave a lot different than metals. They will fail and break with much, much smaller strains than metals. Well, they will basically plastically deform, and composites don't. So that is the reason behind the rule. And well, I am from a field of complete crash tests of cars and also motorsport, etc. And it's heartbreaking if you see like a very, very small deflection and basically your whole chassis is useless. It's a nightmare of any structural engineer. So there you go. Please be aware that it doesn't need to be a perfect example of your monocoque as long as the global dimensions are okay. And I've shown here in this image, kindly provided by one of the teams, a perfect example of how you could perform this test and how it could be attached to your test fixture. So basically this would be perfectly all right. It doesn't need to be very complicated. It will take more time, but you can consider this as a practice session for people to learn laminating as well, before actually laminating your whole car. Last but not least, there's still every single year a lot of rubbish in our area. A lot of plastic bottles left behind, even inspection sheets which are forgotten. And also, yeah, basically everything, screwdrivers or even ore parts are being stolen, and we have to go back and find out, oh, which team actually took our stuff. We don't like this, so please be aware of your stuff and take it with you, keep it clean. And yeah, to remember that we are not your mom. We will not keep cleaning up after you. So please, please, for the sake of the environment and everyone else. So I basically want to spend more time on answering questions. I think you want to as well. So please, the floor is open for any questions. Anyone? Hands up. Start at the front. Is on?
He's on? Yeah. So I have a question about aerodynamics, about the definition of bodyworks, because last year, from experience, there was like a not clear line what could pass, for example, kinematic coverages, aerodynamically formed, or what wouldn't pass. Could you give a clarification about the definition of bodywork?
Christoph?
Yeah. The thing is, every Formula Student car is different, and we cannot, if we restrict it too much, then you cannot build, aerodynamic like you want for your car. So we give you as much freedom as possible, and in the last year, this year we decided if we see anything which has obviously only an aerodynamic advantage and is not built for anything else, then we will not allow it. Yeah. But of course, you build your bodywork not like a wall. You do it in a way that it's good for the aerodynamics, but the bodywork itself is not an aerodynamic device. But if you put anything on your bodywork which is only made for have an aerodynamic advantage and is not made to be bodywork, then we will not allow it.
As a short example as well, regarding aerodynamic devices. Gives the aerodynamic device. You don't have it, right?
Do you want the mic? Yeah, so it's kind of the same as C does. For example, I take like kinematic coverage. I could drive my car with my dampers just in front of my driver. It would be drivable, but it's more elegant to cover it. And I mean, I don't want to build a kinematic coverage, and I get told that it's only for aerodynamic purposes. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So my point is the definition for sorry.
For all the streaming users.
Ah, sorry. My point is, it would be nice if we had like any definition. I mean, it could be kinematic coverage are okay, but plates are not okay. But just having a definition would be more practical for deciding what could be built and what not.
The thing is, if we would announce that, for example, yeah, a cover is okay, then you would build something which is not within the intent of the rule. Because you're all students, you are all very intelligent, and you always try to go at the limit of the rules, and sometimes you go over the limit. And as I said, we cannot at some points we cannot give more restrictions or more definitions without restricting it too much.
One of the goals was also to simplify the rules in a sense, so to find something and write something down which really defines this is quite difficult without actually excluding any actual nice solutions, you know. So, but for example, structural reasons, if something is not stiff enough aerodynamically, something which is related to this as well, see it this way, if it was just purely structural, it would be basically a beam or something instead of some kind of fancy curved plate. So last year I had this argument with someone as well. It's like, no, it's like holding up this other part and it's not, it's actually just structural, but then again, it also works aerodynamically. I had the luck at that point to be able to refer to a friend of mine as and he was an aerodynamicist at Red Bull. So he would definitely tell you, yes, it's an aerodynamic device. Of course it's an aerodynamic device. Otherwise it wouldn't be shaped that way. If it was perfectly just structural, it would be a beam. Basically something like that. Try to think in a different way and see if you can argument it in a different way. And most of the time that will give you your answer. If it was literally that shape, if there's any other benefit of doing it differently, would you? Yes, definitely. You're smart enough. You probably do. So try to find, not to argue something good for it or something bad for it, but do it the opposite way around. If you have any doubts, obviously it's a one-by-one case. So it's very difficult, but try to clarify it maybe beforehand via rules questions if you interpreted it right. But then again, it's very difficult to define one specific rule. So that's why we basically left it open this year again.
So aesthetics would be a valid argument because I don't see any benefit with a nose or a kinematics cover. That's the problem. You can't keep the rules such open.
I think we shorten that. Use your brain. If you think it's unfair to do it, then don't do it because you aren't allowed to. And I'm pretty sure your team knows exactly what it's allowed or what is allowed and what not.
I think we can close that one off for now.
Yes.
And give room to other questions. Like the next one in the middle there.
I've got a question regarding the height restrictions of the aero devices. There's a rule stating that the height restriction must be fulfilled with and without driver and with any suspension setup. Does this basically mean that you will measure the 250 millimeters without driver and the ground clearance with driver? And will we be asked in scrutineering to take the highest suspension setup possible for this measurement?
We will measure it in the setup you show in the scrutineering. And we could also measure it, for example, after a dynamic event. So we will, what you're doing between that with your with the ride height or something in your car, yeah, it's up to you.
So at any combination, if you go into acceleration, make sure that your lightest driver in the combination with your car setup is still rule compliant. Whatever you show in inspection, in combination with like the wheel travel, that everything is still rule compliant. But yeah, be aware of the status of your vehicle at any time, which is again very difficult, but to make the checks beforehand.
But yeah, the rule says that it must fit with the driver and without. And so maybe we measure the ground clearance with the driver and the height of the rear wing, for example, without. That is possible.
So we're not going to check any combination of driver with any combination of vehicle setup. It's going to be just, okay, maybe your acceleration driver with whatever setup, maybe your skid pad driver with whatever setup. After any dynamic event, we can basically check it. So there.
So the intent of the rule is basically for post-scrutineering that it fits in post-scrutineering in any setup which is shown in post-scrutiny, basically.
So this, the restrictions for aerodynamic devices, there, or one reason for those restrictions is to make it fair for all teams. And we want to make sure in post-inspection, we want to make sure that you have no advantage against the other teams. So, yeah.
There was no clarification of any setup. That's what the point I was asking.
Yeah, we are measuring, yeah, okay.
Other question?
Okay. We are planning to build our this year's accumulator container with a self-made fire retardant pre-brake, and I think it must isolate, I think in our case at around 2000 volt, and we don't really know how to prove that.
Sarah, would you like to answer
Can
that
you
question?
tell
Accumulators.
this?
Like you know the rules, what you should prove with fire retardant. We showed the images. You can do a test like everywhere else, prove that the test is done correctly somewhere, send it in, create a data sheet, let it prove that the data sheet is correct, and you can use it.
Okay, but there's not a specific test we have to use for the isolation.
Just look up how it's written, how the isolation should work, what isolation is, and there are always rules and formulations, so I would use one of them, an official one, and show the tests. But prepare everything for Hockenheim, bring some test pieces, and then you can do it.
Hi, one of the first slides you showed the lug bolts, that they shouldn't be hollow anymore, but I think the picture was actually drive packs where that you only use to deliver the torque to the wheel.
There
So are drive packs meant as well, or is it only for threaded components?
Christoph, this is your question.
Yeah, It's the rule is also about those. So you call it drive packs, yeah. We had it in the past. We had it this year. That they were totally broken, and the reason why we do not allow that is if they are broken and your center lock is not completely or it's not correctly mounted, and you're braking, you do not decelerate anymore because your wheel can drive.
Like, I see the point, but we're making sure that it can deliver the torque. But if we then make us do it the full metal one without hollowing, I will just go on and only use one because it's wastes way too much.
And then I will tell you that it's not good engineering practice and you have to find another solution.
Like, I totally see, yeah. You want to make sure that it's not failing. I totally get that.
Yes, but I don't think that this is a problem for you. So just don't make it hollow and that's it. It's very simple.
And next question, you can always, like after this, come up to Christoph to discuss it again, but we'll keep on answering questions as much as possible.
I have a question about the impact attenuated testing. Does this new setup apply also for driverless vehicles? So does it mean we have to redo the test with the new setup, or are the old tests with the metal bucket dummies all still accepted?
I'm aware that there's one of these questions as well, still on the rules tracker, which hasn't been published yet. Beforehand in the rules there are certain exceptions for driverless cars defined. This one hasn't been included. I'm still in discussion with other people as well. So in my opinion, I would say not for the driverless cars. But then again, yeah, it's pretty difficult discussion here. So I can't give you a definite answer right now, but hopefully very soon in the next upcoming days. So I have been having these discussions, so as to say this weekend. So thank you again, but it will come, like a definite answer will come soon.
Okay, thanks.
Last season we were told that secure floating brake disc with a snap ring wouldn't be allowed any longer, but I can't find any update on the rules, so maybe you can give a statement on that if it's allowed or not.
We will handle it like the past years.
What defines the outer edge of the primary structure? Because we have the accumulator mounting on the lower tube of our space frame.
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
What defines the outer edge of the primary structure?
The outer edge of the primary structure. In what context again? Like
our accumulator is fitted to the lower tube of our space frame, so what is the outer edge of the primary structure, because the tractive system needs to be inside the primary structure?
Basically that would mean on the inner side of, if it's a tubular space frame, that your accumulator must lie on the full inner side of the tube, so the bottom line would not be valid, but you seem to say that like the attachment itself is like welded or on the bottom side of the tube, basically?
It's on the center of the tube.
It's on the center of the tube. In general, I would interpret it as in the accumulator needs to be within the primary structure. It's going to be the same basically for monocoques. Like your battery, your accumulator walls are not allowed to be the same as the primary structure. So in that case, then yes, your accumulator must be completely within, if it's a steel space frame, within the frame. So that tube, if it's welded to the middle, it should be welded to the top of the tube. I would interpret it this way. If there's any real issues, problematic issues with the design, then obviously it's again a one-by-one case, and you will need to send in a rules request or clarify with us over email or something. But that would be an issue, and if there's any other way of showing compliance or equivalency, then yeah, you can try to do this. But then again, I would interpret it as in being bottom not allowed, top yes, needs to be fully within the frame.
We will publish an FAQ about that.
It's about DV sensors and components. It says that components must be placed inside the surface envelope. When the brake pedal is outside the surface envelope but inside the primary structure, how can I add an EBS system on that? So the surface envelope goes around the tire.
Yes.
Yes, and the primary structure is the monocoque.
Yes.
And the brake pedal is inside the monocoque, so it's inside the primary structure, but it's in front of the tire. And then we have to add an EBS system, so it's not inside the surface envelope. How can we do that?
Just from side view, you mean like the EBS is going to be like somewhere in front of the...
Maybe we should go for a inside surface envelope or primary structure here. So yeah, you're right, it's in front, the front tire, and therefore usually not inside the surface envelope, but it's still protected by the frame and or primary structure, therefore it's okay. Maybe we should think about an FAQ here.
I just want to clarify what you said about the quick jack. You said that the blocks under the wheels are no longer allowed. It's not stated specifically in the rules, and many teams do that for jacking the car when they have front wings.
It is written in the rules, and they haven't done it this year. Yeah, because we looked at this, and in the rules there's written that there must be no other action than positioning and operating the quick check itself. So if you have to lift up the car to put something under the car, or you have to push the car to put it on something, then it's not okay. More questions?
Here at the front. Christophe?
I have also a question to the quick jack. Our quick jack, we can dismount in 3 pieces, but yeah, if we can just, so it's just dismountable for transport, so it doesn't take up so much space. Is it then okay that we have a quick jack that can be dismounted, but when we just let it mounted the whole time in the scooter, is it allowed to use it?
Yeah, this would be okay.
Yeah, my question. Am I allowed or not? Okay. Yeah, my question about the drain holes, because you also always had discussions about it over the past years, because our floor of the monocoque is angled, and the rules said, okay, I have to have 2 drain holes in the lowest part of my chassis, obviously because the rain is stubbing there, but because we have a vertical firewall, and our liquids are behind that firewall for the inverter cooling and stuff, we also had to have additional holes there. There was always a discussion if we can use 125mm hole before and one behind the firewall, because we are told that we have to have those 2 25mm at the lowest point and then the additional one behind. Maybe you can clarify what to do, because at all 3 competitions this year and also the last years, or all 3 competitions, I got different answers to that.
We skip this question, we give an answer in a few minutes.
May I?
Yeah.
Okay, one more question concerning the pin hubs.
Yep.
We do a very small hole in there, like 1 or 2 millimeters, so that the air can pass out of it to get it into the wheel nut. So basically, the wheel hub.
Yeah, I think we can stop here because then you have a hole inside and then it's not allowed.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Even though I'm not breaking the intent of the rule to do it hollow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a question concerning driverless environment perception sensors, because like I understand earlier, I think everything has to be rigidly mounted 25 millimeters behind the AAP. So we are not allowed to mount basically, for an example, LiDAR sensors on the front wing if it's designed to brake within the deceleration limits for the impact attenuator. Is this still not allowed if we can prove that those will be gone away if we crash?
So that's basically literally the question below, like what are non-crushable objects? The intent of the rule, yes, there you're right. If you somehow can prove that they are actually not being crushable objects anymore, then obviously this would be some kind of loophole in the rules, which I would be fine with. But then again, you'll be having stuff flying around in your chassis, which can obstruct your driver from getting out. So there's other issues there as well. I hope that this answers your question. Other questions here?
Yes, so we have outboard motors, we have a four-wheel drive electric car, so the rule says cooling systems using water planes and so on, cover plates regard to T4A2. So do we need for the motors cover plates, which mean we have a plate so at the car? I mean, that looks really, really strange and it's not helping.
Just to clarify, this rule or the cover plates must meet the requirements of rule T482. This is the rule about the direct line of sight to the driver. So you don't have to cover your motors itself. You must cover the direct line between the driver and all parts which have water in it.
Okay, but obviously the most cars with outboard motors, the motors are in the line of sight. So all cars in the last years are not required to the rule, especially while steering. So
most of the time, the cooling jackets around your motors already function as basically a scatter plate or some kind of firewall. In this case, as it's being a rigid.
Then we use cooling shells out of aluminum. Then it's okay.
I do agree, like your interpretation here, but for the outboard motors, like you have the cooling sleeves, or there's different names for them, right? So, but these are a certain dimension, certain thickness most of the time, and these will function basically as a sort of scatter shield in this case, as a firewall. Same thing for like the, sorry, that's gonna be my answer. So,
okay.
yeah.
I want to come back to your question about the 25 millimeter holes. In the rule there's written additional holes are required when multiple local lowest parts exist in the structure. And the rule is about enclosed chassis structures. So if you have a firewall which separates another part and it's also an enclosed chassis structure, then of course you have to add a hole there.
Yeah, my question was if I then may be allowed to put the one of the 25 millimeter holes in front and one behind the rear wall, because the rule also says that they have to be at the lowest point, and additionally when I've separated lower points. But with an angled floor, I have the lowest point still before the firewall, so that's why we put both 25 in front and additional in the rear, and not just two holes, one 25 before and one behind the firewall.
Then, yeah, no, you have to put one in the front then and one in the rear. Would be, I don't know your car right now, but if it's a normal standard electric vehicle with no oil, somewhere only water cooled, or then it would be okay to have one hole in the front and one in the back.
Can I shortly add to that? Like the original rule, I think here was basically based on left and right position. So the lowest point left and the lowest point right. So that's why there were originally like expected 2 holes in the rear enclosed structure, and then 2 holes in the front enclosed structure, so that in any position of your driver that volatile fluids could get out. So also if your car is driving left or right. But I would personally be very fine, and Christoph in this case as well, we will be fine with having just 1 hole in the back and 1 hole in the front, possibly then in the middle, so that as soon as there is actually a large buildup of fluids, that at least something can get out. So yeah, it might be that your car is completely rolled position, but that would not be very favorable for your car as well.
Yes, I want to add to this question, because we had last year's car, we put our front motor controllers beyond the driver's feet, so we got at least 4 lowest sections for the in the chassis, and in the section where the motor controller is, we got the firewall over it and completely seal it against any fluids, and then we got only a small face of the chassis right in front of the electrical connections, and there we had to do 2 of these big holes where the water came from the downside to right in front of the motor controllers. And I'm asking, is this the real intent of the rule, that we have to do in this case, if we got 4 lowest sections, to do in every section these 2 big holes? So
I cannot give a general answer to that, because I at the moment I do not know how your car was built or something. Yeah, if you are not sure about how to interpret the rule, just write a rules request, and if you had issues in the past about that point, write a rules request to make sure, yeah, that you don't have problems in the future.
So we've clarified the 4 holes or 2 holes, 1 in the back, 1 in the front, or 2 in the back and 2 in the front. We've clarified that one, but the one thing that still stands is 1 hole in each lowest section of your chassis. So there we're not gonna change anything, so that's gonna be still the case. And then on top of that, you're asking regarding, but it's an enclosed structure where no fluids at all can get to. Well, if you can 100% prove that is the case, like there's absolutely no fluids even possible to get into that section, then we could maybe make an exception there, but we can't define it right now and justify that decision.
Okay. So 1 minute left. I would say it's the last question, but you can also ask questions outside later.
I have a question regarding the firewall. It says it must separate the driver compartment and all hydraulic fluids. Are the dampers excluded? Because I think at the most cars you can see the dampers.
The dampers?
The hydraulic suspension dampers?
Yes, they are excluded. Yeah. Yeah.
Should be added then. Update. Any other questions?
No.
I still have one here. There is time.
So for the impact attenuator test, the front bulkhead structure has any minimum requirements in order to be representative? Yeah, this one. So the laminated structure, how can we consider that it's representative?
You mean the length, like the length from the
From
impact
the
attenuator to
anti-intrusion
the
plate
attachment?
to the steel plate.
Was it 50 millimeters, I believe? No, there's a defined dimension in the rules. Sorry, I'm not like right now on top of my head. Sorry, which dimension it is, but there's a defined dimension. But the global dimension of your chassis behind it, like those don't need to be exact on the millimeter, as long as it's representative. But the length, like how long it has to be, is defined. Okay. So it should be in there.
Okay, so thank you very much. If you have still some questions, we can just meet outside in the big hall, and you can just come to us and ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.